protect, failure of police to respond, failure to do their duty to, to issue, to get restraining orders, to enforce restraining orders. And so we've had in Colorado women murdered when the police, just chose not to take seriously the restraining order. Is that something an attorney general could get involved in, instead of having a private attorney using 1983 to sue? That's something the attorney general can do when there's, a municipality that refuses to enforce the laws and protect victims?
That's a really good question. I don't think any attorney general has ever looked at it in that way. I think that it would be about influencing policy through the legislature to try to get. Let's think about this.
We have laws. We just have some municipalities where the police choose not to enforce them.
Yeah. Well, and then, that becomes a writ of mandamus, or it becomes the one particular part of the statute that you could file against the prosecuting attorney and force them to answer to the judge as to why they're not, doing certain things. But, I've never seen the Office of the Attorney General engage in that way to file, let's say, a writ of mandamus to force an official, a public official, to engage in a particular behavior. So, I guess.
But when they violate the rules and someone gets hurt, so you can sue an industry if the industry violates regulations and poisons our water and our air. Mm-hmm. Why can't you, on behalf of the citizens, sue a police officer who refuses to enforce the law and protect, a victim who's subsequently beaten or murdered?
Okay. I'm not saying that you could or couldn't. I just think that that hasn't been looked at in that particular way, and I'd be happy to look at it.
And that's part of the discussion is just throwing things that,
Sure.
So we're thinking about.
Right, think outside the box.
Yeah. A couple of things around homelessness. We heard D.A. Garnett, who's very pro-local control on this issue of dealing with homeless people. And my argument to him has been, that's what gave us separate but equal with the Plessy v. Ferguson case for, nearly 6 decades until we had Brown v. Board of Education. And we ended segregation. And certainly there's a balancing.
Not quite, but.
Right. On paper. on paper, yeah.
Schools weren't exactly integrated that day.
Well, even now. But, I'm curious what your response first is to this concern about local control. I think, and the other part of why I wanted to get one last comment from you is you're running for AG and I want you to win. You're my favorite legislator. I want you in the AG position. And I fear that when people hear this message, even, Boulder Council, some of our members who have supported you, would be leery or nervous. So what do you say to them that says, look, this really is in everybody's best interest and it's not going to be a harm to you, or do you have an answer to that?
I'm never going to be able to alleviate the concerns that they have on the positions that I've taken against the ordinances here in Boulder. And I have spoken with some members of city council and like, man, we love you on everything else, but man, we just are not going to agree on this issue of the homeless, and that's fine. But if that's going to be their litmus test, you need to support our right to criminalize the homeless population. Well, we're just going to have to go our separate ways. This isn't about politics for me, guys. It's always about people first. It's not about the party, and it's not about politics. And I don't think I've ever seen a line in the sand from Boulder City Council members when it comes to being supportive of each other. But if they did draw that line in the sand saying, we're not going to support you as AG because you might come after us in your position to get rid of our ordinance, then so be it. Okay, that's fine. Because it's, how many people do you have on city council?
9 here. Yeah.
So that's 9 votes, right? But then there's the rest of people in the city and county of Boulder, and that's who I would be going out to look for support. See, politicians are very unique individuals. They think that they're the gatekeepers to their electorate, and in some ways maybe they are, right? But by and large, people are pretty doggone smart. Voters are pretty savvy. And, well, our kinds of voters are pretty savvy. You know, and there are some who just want to be led around by, you know, by the nose and told what to think. But I think that even some of those individuals are waking up. In fact, I met an individual last night who did vote for 45, and she's very disappointed in her vote. And she has now turned the corner to becoming a Democrat. And she's just hoping, that she didn't make a mistake. And, you know, what I told people last night was you know, fairly simple, is that an awful lot of what is happening here in the state of Colorado and the low voter turnout that we've seen over the multiple election cycles is because we don't have leaders who stand up and actually take positions anymore. You know, it's all about how can I best message this, or what is my talking point going to be? Instead of actually sitting down with people and learning from them, hey, you know, what's going on in your area? You know, what can I do to help? And how can you educate me about you know, what's happening in rural or what's happening in urban or suburban communities? And so what I tell people is this: look, you're going to have a lot of folks coming through here asking you for your vote for the governor's position, office of the Attorney General, Secretary of State, and the Treasurer, the 4 constitutional positions that we have. And what I want you to do, and I want you to put the screws to me on it too, and you know, you guys done a really great job today. What I want you to do is I want you to ask them, where have you been? Where have you been this entire time? You want to run for an office now. Where have you been? Where have you been in my community? Have you ever stood up for anybody? Have you ever been in the fight? And if the answer is no, then tell them to just walk along the way, right? Because if they're not willing to stand up for you when it matters, then they're not going to stand up for you at all. And what is it Martin Luther King said is that that, you know, when you don't stand up, you know, I just had the thought just a little bit ago. It's you know, a leader stands up during times of controversy, right? And that's when you see your leaders, is when they put everything on the line. And when they know that it may not be politically expedient, but they're out there and they do it. We don't have those kinds of leaders anymore. I was a political activist just like you before I became a legislator. I saw it happen in the legislature in 2006 when Democratic-controlled legislature enacted really heinous anti-immigration legislation. And we sat down with those Democrats and said, don't do this. Don't do it. It's going to hurt communities. And they said, well, you know, we're nervous about this whole, you know, anti-immigration fervor, so we think that we need to do something about it too. And then it took myself and Senator Ulibarri and Representative Duran and a few others to come in 2012 and 13 to wipe out most of that. Because we learned that what we already knew is it was bad. But Democrats took that position in 2006 because they were scared. They didn't hold fast. They didn't draw a line. They didn't say, this stops right here and right now. They said, oh, we want to make sure we keep the House and the Senate, so we're going to draw this line in the Senate. And guess what? They lost the Senate anyway. And then later on, they lost the House. And so what does it mean to be a progressive in 2017? It means that you're not afraid of losing your position. You're not afraid of losing your seat. And you're just looking forward to supporting the people. That's what it means to be a progressive in 2017. And that's how I've always operated. They almost took me out in 2014. Republicans almost took me out of my seat. I won by 221 votes. 221. And they said, watch, when Salazar comes back in 2015, he's going to moderate. Oh no, I charged even harder. I charged even harder. And then I won by 12 points in 2016. Stan, I'm not so certain, is reading the tea leaves very well. People want leaders. That's what they want. They want people who are unafraid. The politics are over.
We want leaders who are human beings, not just lawyers anymore.
Right. And when you lead from a position of humanity, people will come out and vote because now they got something to vote for.
About 10 minutes before they're going to start making announcements over the BA, and then they're going to send one of the security guards in to tell us what and then we have to leave.
What are you going to do about that, Joe? So what are you going to do about the security guards, Joe?
I don't know.
But we're not,
Let me start calling
we're not,
other city council.
but what I do want to do, and it's interesting that I want to move the discussion for what time we have, really where we're heading now towards the politics of how do we elect a progressive attorney general, not just, why it's important to have one, but